The rumor drifted across Windsor Great Park like early morning mist, undeniable, delicate, yet laced with the tang of revolution. Courtiers tried to swat it away with rehearsed smiles, but every whisper slithered under carved oak doors until it reached the one room nobody could barricade, the nursery of a future king. There, amid scattered Lego bricks, Charlotte asked the question even seasoned equerries dreaded, "Mummy, why does Fort Belvedere make Grandpapa scowl?" The answer, like so many Windsor truths, began long before any of them were born, on an icy December afternoon in 1936, when a lovesick monarch uncrowned himself with 13 pen strokes. 89 years later the ink is still wet, and William and Catherine are about to press their palms against it. The first echo, Edward's love-overthrown gambit. Picture the scene: a draughty study, drapes sucked inward by a winter gale, and Edward VIII hunched over parchment that feels heavier than lead. Outside, Fort Belvedere's turrets crouch beneath gunmetal clouds. Inside, the king's fountain pen trembles, not from cold but from the knowledge that all of Britain is holding its breath. He signs, lifts his chin, and hands abdication papers to a private secretary, whose face has turned the color of curdled milk. In one reckless gesture, duty sinks beneath desire, and the crown tumbles to Elizabeth's father, an unprepared, stammering Duke of York, who will shape the wartime spirit while silently cursing the brother who bequeathed him the burden. Now rewind the reel. Replace Edward's silhouette with William's taller frame, Catherine's composure standing where Wallace once pirouetted in a scarlet gown. Replace the roaring 30s crowd with smartphones set to record. In a single mortgage deed, the heirs apparent could breathe new life into a residence many courtiers believe should remain sealed in amber, its shutters locked against the memory of royal disgrace. That is the electricity crackling through Windsor's avenues tonight, the sense that history might be about to flip its own coin and land on the other face. Adelaide Cottage, a doll's house that outgrew the dolls. For 18 months Adelaide Cottage suited the Waleses like an exquisitely stitched glove, until the children's elbows poked through the seams. 4 bedrooms for 5 royals sounds generous until you add a nanny, a protection officer, a rotating cast of visiting cousins, and a future monarchy's archives of Lego Star Destroyers. More pressingly, George's Eton start date breathes down the family timetable like an oncoming train. Catherine studies Google Maps journeys at midnight, calculating how many minutes of sleep a 13-year-old heir will lose in traffic. The answer she finds unacceptable. The alternative lies 4 miles south, between deer-speckled meadows and a moat once filled to discourage parliamentary mobs. Inside Fort Belvedere, 9 bedrooms, 1 cursed deed. Walk through the iron gates and the past ambushes you. Black and white photographs of Edward's notorious cocktail soirees line the corridor. Atop the piano, a silver ashtray still bears scratches left by Winston Churchill's signet ring. William pictures repainting the gallery in Oxford blue. Catherine imagines homework stations under mullioned windows. Yet curator whispers remain. Never open the 3rd drawer in the king's bedroom. Edward carved Wallace's initials there the night before exile. The palace archivist, bent with decades of dust, pleads for preservation, not transformation. But paint swatches are already pinned to the paneling, and moodboard clippings of Charlotte's potential attic studio drift like confetti across a Louis Quinn's desk. Charles's dilemma: slimming the monarchy versus housing the future. From Clarence House, King Charles watches costs multiply faster than headlines. 40% of roof tiles need replacing, the Victorian plumbing groans beneath modern water pressure. Eco-retrofits alone will consume £500,000. And that's before Catherine upgrades the crumbling orangery into a sunlight-flooded art room. Courtiers present spreadsheets thick enough to stun an elk. The king fingers their corners, mindful of public uproar over energy bills, mindful too of Balmoral gales rattling loose masonry he cannot afford to ignore. His aides suggest leasing Fort Belvedere to a private trust, maybe a luxury hotel brand willing to foot the restoration. Then he imagines journalists photographing his grandchildren stepping into a lobby where tourists sip Negronis. The idea dies before the ink dries. Charles summons William for Sunday lunch, venison, heirloom carrots, and a side dish of generational tension. They speak in the coded dialect of Windsor men, short sentences heavy with subtext, compliments that conceal instructions, silences that function as ultimatums. Catherine enters carrying Louis on one hip and a plate of sticky toffee pudding on the other. For 20 minutes sugar disguises conflict. After dessert, the king clears his throat. "A house is never just a house for us," he murmurs. William's jaw sets. In that fracture, between father's caution and son's horizon, the monarchy's next decade vibrates. The austerity optic. Public reaction to royal real estate deals can pivot from admiration to fury in the space of a headline. In 2023, Charles's plan to evict Prince Andrew from Royal Lodge sparked tabloids into feeding frenzy. To greenlight multimillion restoration now, amid NHS strikes and mortgage hikes, invites accusations of tone-deaf privilege. Yet Catherine's PR instincts slash through doubt with surgical precision. She schedules a charitable roundtable on rural homelessness at a parish hall 2 miles from Fort Belvedere. On the same morning, drone footage reveals scaffolding hugging Edward's turret. Message received: "We upgrade one historic roof, we upgrade life chances elsewhere." The symbolic tug-of-war. Fort Belvedere is not merely square footage, it's an unfinished sentence in the House of Windsor's saga. To inhabit it is to declare that history's blemishes can be rehabilitated rather than hidden. Some courtiers applaud. A reclamation project proves the crown faces its ghosts. Others recoil. The public already misreads nuance. Why tempt them with the echo of abdication? William leans toward reclamation. Catherine, versed in narrative management, sees potential to rebrand the mansion as a learning center for constitutional duty, school tours, interactive exhibitions on loyalty versus individualism, Edward positioned as cautionary tale, not romantic martyr. Every unstable beam replaced, every cracked tile immortalized with QR code plaques telling visitors, "Here, duty paused, here, it breathes again." George's future classroom. While adults parse symbology, George eyes a map. Fort Belvedere's paddock adjoins the bridleway where Prince Philip once exercised polo ponies. Charlotte imagines rescuing retired racehorses. Louis simply wants a moat for super soaker battles. The children's innocence disarms Catherine's worries. The very place that witnessed a king rejecting responsibility might nurture youngsters learning to shoulder it. Behind the gatehouse, what the craftsmen know. Builders have already drafted risk assessments. The Great Hall's oak staircase requires steel reinforcement. Lead light windows demand artisanal restoration by glaziers whose waiting list rivals that of Harley Street surgeons. One foreman, third-generation craftsperson, whose grandfather helped remodel Windsor after the 1992 fire, murmurs, "We can make the past safe, but we can't change how it feels." His team packs scaffolding anyway, because bricks answer to budgets, not ghosts. Camilla's raised eyebrow. Queen Camilla, who has spent 2 decades turning muted hostility into grudging affection, recognizes the narrative minefield. She remembers being blamed for Diana's shadow, and knows how quickly public nostalgia curdles into condemnation. Privately, she worries Fort Belvedere will reignite Netflix docudrama fervor. The Abdication house reopens. Front page catnip. Yet she cannot dismiss the couple's logic. Bigger children, bigger responsibilities, bigger house. Instead she drafts a plan for Clarence's house to open twice yearly to income-controlled visitors, offsetting optics of extravagance. It is the monarchy's quiet calculus. One step toward opulence must be matched by one toward accessibility. The invisible opposition. Far from Windsor, in a terraced house in Burnley, pensioner Jean Carter folds the sun across her lap, frowning at the headline, Will's eyes £5 million palace upgrade. She voted leave to rattle elites, counts grocery pennies on a spreadsheet, and wonders why princes need 9 bedrooms. Social media amplifies her skepticism, Republican hashtags surge, demanding referenda. Kensington Palace comms intercept data flows, spin out Instagram posts of Catherine wearing recycled Zara jackets, William pounding litter-strewn beaches with Scout volunteers. The strategy is working, approval ratings bounce, yet Fort Belvedere glitters like forbidden fruit in algorithmic shadows. A date with the Duchy. Funding remains the thorniest bramble. The Duchy of Cornwall, William since September 2022, earns £25 million net annually, ring-fenced for public, charitable, and private costs. Renovating Fort Belvedere could be justified under long-term custodianship of heritage assets. But the moment Duchy carpenters unpack their toolboxes, anti-monarchy MPs will cite abuse of quasi-public funds. William's finance secretary drafts a counteroffer. The couple foot personal interior costs, furnishings, decor, while structural works come from Duchy coffers, later recouped through increased estate revenue. Charles presses 2 fingers to his temple, glimpsing spreadsheets until numbers blur. In the end, heritage always finds the money, the question is whether hearts follow. Revelation in the Long Library. In February a rumor leaks. William and Catherine conducted a 6 a.m. tour of Fort Belvedere under fog so thick ravens lost their bearings. They lingered longest in the Long Library where Edward once penned letters to Wallace. A single desk lamp illuminated dust motes swirling like microscopic galaxies around leather-bound volumes, Kingship and Constitution, Love Among the Ruins, Tact for Beginners. William pulled one tome free. Within its gutter lay a folded note in sepia ink, Edward's abandoned draft of a speech he never gave, begging the nation to accept his heart's choice. The prince read silently, then placed it back. When Catherine asked what it said, he replied, that sometimes love rewrites duty. She answered, and sometimes duty repairs love. The exchange remains private, yet staff swear something shifted. Determination replaced curiosity, blueprints followed. Charles's concession, or capitulation. April draws near. The king realizes obstruction could fracture the generational partnership he relies on. Behind closed doors he offers a compromise, a 30-year lease, contingent on Fort Belvedere operating educational tours 6 weekends a year, and maintaining Edward's study intact as historical exhibit. William accepts. Catherine smiles. A bond between monarch and heir, strained almost to snapping, relaxes one notch. Public announcement is timed for the last parliamentary recess Friday. Very bad optics. Run victory laps later. Public unveiling. Press release lands at 9:01 a.m. Embargo lifted. The Prince and Princess of Wales will undertake careful restoration of Fort Belvedere, transforming it into a sustainable family home and heritage site. Social feeds convulse. Monarchists hail reclamation, Republicans decry renovation costs. Aerial shots show moss scraped from parapets, architects in high-vis jackets swarm like neon ants. Catherine appears on site in steel-capped boots, discussing geothermal heating with engineers. William live streams biodiversity surveys revealing rare pipistrelle bats, environmental win amidst perceived excess. Slowly, sentiment balances. Epilogue written in stone dust. 19 months later, on a wind-sharpened September dawn, the Wales family move in. George, hair longer, shoulder squarer, places his school bag on Edward's old blotter and whispers, "I'll look after it." Charlotte claims the turret bedroom, hanging biodegradable fairy lights along Gothic arches. Louis chases Labradors across lawns where Churchill once plotted war. That night Catherine watches fog coil around ramparts and realizes the house no longer smells of abdication, but of fresh plaster, beeswax, and rosemary from newly planted borders. The past has been sanded, not erased, its splinters repurposed into cautionary lessons recited over cocoa. Across the park, in a candlelit study of Windsor Castle, Charles reads budget reports, showing Fort Belvedere tours, generating scholarship funds for underprivileged Eton applicants. The arithmetic pleases him, but what suits him more is the photograph on his desk. 3 grandchildren laughing beneath ivy-clad stone, the middle one clutching a textbook titled Constitutional Crises and Their Consequences. Legacy, it seems, has found its next keepers. And somewhere far beneath the floorboards, perhaps beside the third drawer never opened, the ghost of Edward VIII exhales, not in envy, not in regret, but in quiet gratitude that the palace he once used to escape duty has re-entered the royal bloodstream as proof that duty can, at last, coexist with love. That is the story Fort Belvedere now tells, and the monarchy, chastened, trimmed, yet unbroken, steps forward over restored thresholds, carrying both the weight of history and the fragile hope that, this time, the walls will witness a king who stays.